I don't have enough time in the day to complete all my tasks at home or at work. I have a feeling that I'm losing control, that things are slipping through the cracks. I'm one of those people that try to do everything perfectly. I just want to do too much in too little time. Now, as I look out there, and I'm sure wherever you're at, some of you are saying, she just read the comment I wrote on that survey. She just read that out loud. Well, we had 1,000 people respond to this survey. We had 600 women and 400 men from 33 countries. And these comments were repeated almost word for word over and over again. So we are not alone in work-life struggles. Whether we're working parents like myself, or a single parent, or come from a blended family, your own type of family, or maybe you have someone that you have to take care of, like an elder parent, or a special needs child. Or perhaps it's just that your life is pretty intense, as well as our careers at the same time. So we're not alone in these work-life struggles. And today, what I thought I would do with us, as a way of getting at this topic, is to talk about how do you create a work-life vision? How do you take charge of your life? And so I want to go through 3 sections of our talk today. One is to actually share experiences. We'll do some fun around that survey, and I'll share with you the results. And as we do that, I want you to find a pain point, something that you do want to change in your life. Because with that pain point, we'll next go into something fairly practical. You know, I am an engineer, so I have a spreadsheet and a 4-step process that's worked for me, and I want to share with you today on how to create that work-life vision. And then I want to leave you with a call to action, because in 30 minutes, you know, we can't change our lives. But if you decide to commit and carry forth on that pain point and use that 4-step process, and perhaps to do it with some of your people in AWIN or your spouse or a friend, you can indeed get to the point where you can live the life that you envision. And that's my wish for you today. But before we go any further, I want to answer that question of why is this even on the agenda today? Why has AWIN decided to sponsor a work-life discussion? Well, it's obvious we're under personal stress. I mean, on the survey, I'll share 1 out of every 4 said they were under major to overwhelming stress. But you know, it's more than that now, and that's why AWIN has it on the agenda. It's a business issue. It's a business concern. And here's why. Well, first of all, you always think about work life as a woman's issue. And indeed, you know, we have had that traditional struggle of career and family. Career and our life. And businesses are concerned because today 60% of the graduates from college are women. And that's a worldwide figure in developed countries, 60%. So getting work-life right is important to the business because there's a huge talent pool that's particularly affected by work life. But it's more than a women's issue. And I think I mentioned 400 men responded to this survey, 400 men across Ashland. Because women and men today are actually seeing a whole different work-life view. Because in the last 5 years, the generations that are part of our workforce have changed. And I thought we'd test this theory out. So here in Dublin or wherever you're at, raise your hand if you were born before 1965. So how many do we have? Okay. I'm going to say it's about a third, perhaps. Let me ask the next question. How many were born after 1965, part of the Gen X generation? Or after 1981, part of... I'm looking around this room. Keep your hands up, Gen X and millennials. It is more than 50%. And that's the change over the last 5 years. We've gone from a workforce that was kind of boomer-oriented to one that's Gen X and millennial. And how has that changed work-life views? Well, I have to admit I'm a boomer. And the characteristics of that generation, was that we saw fulfillment in our career, that we lived to work. And here I am, Joy introduced me. I retired to do what? Start another business. But Gen Xers and millennials see this differently. Gen Xers in particular have come up through a time of chaos, recessions, downsizing after downsizing. And so don't get me wrong, work is very important to a Gen Xer. In fact, they know it's all about the results. It's all about performance, streamlining. And they know that life is more than work because they've gone through tough times, and they know they need to have the friends and the family to fall back on. And millennials, they don't even understand when you say there's work and there's life and that's supposed to be separate. Their life is 24/7. They came up through the internet generation. I mean, and we're global. We call people in the different time zones in the evening, in the morning. If we need to do something in our personal life, well, we need to get that done when it needs to be done. And what about being in an office? Do you need to be in an office to do work? So these are the different work-life views today. And for businesses to engage this talent that we have, they need to find ways to support us in our work life. And so today it's on the agenda so that we can hear a little bit more about work life and test this out and see how do we become effective at work life. Okay, let's start with sharing some experiences. And I want to play a game. I'm known for this. I want to get you engaged, so I hope you're warmed up enough because I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to stand. And what we're going to play is Last Man Standing. I'm going to go through the survey results. And I'll ask the question. I'll give you two choices. If you make the correct choice for your colleagues, then you stand, remain standing. If not, then you sit. And we're going to see who's the last man standing. So no matter where you're at in the world, let's stand up now. I'm counting on you out in Lexington and Wayne, Savannah, Barondreck. I hope you're all standing. We are here. And we'll start with an easy question. How much time do we work? What did the survey say? 1,000 people. Put your thumb up if you think we work greater than 9 hours. Thumb down if you think less. So make your choice. If everyone's made their choice, the answer is greater than 9 hours. Oh, we only had one person sit down here. Another, I think, easy question. How much time do we sleep? Greater than 8 hours or less than 8 hours? Oh, this one, people aren't even hesitating here in Dublin. If you all made your choice, it's less than 8 hours. All right, everyone's still standing. Let's take another question. See how you do on this one. The next question was children. How much time do we spend with our children? Now, 75% of the people who responded have children. So even if you don't have children, make a guess. Greater than 2 hours or less than 2 hours? See how we do here. Greater than 2 or less? All right, if everyone's made their choice, the answer is actually greater than 2 hours. Oh, we had a few people sit down. Oh, yeah. Okay, it's getting tough. We're going to up the ante here because we're going to the next question. And this is the difference between men and women. The difference between men and women. Who spends more time on their own? Men or women? Thumbs up for men, thumbs down for women. All right, and the answer is men. Okay, a few more, but you know, a lot of people guessed that one. Here's one. Who spends more time with their spouse? Is it men or women? Thumbs up for men, thumbs down for women. Oh, we're going to get people on this one. It's the men. Oh, ye of little faith. Oh. Well, if you could pan the crowd here, you would see 4 people still standing in Dublin. I don't know how you're doing where you're at. Oh, yes. Ted is smiling, yes. All right. Who spends more time on the chores? This is inside, outside. Oh, they won't even let me finish the question. Men or women? It's women. How did we know that? Okay. Whose number one choice is it if I were to give you an extra hour to spend that extra hour with your spouse or your partner? Is it the men or is it the women? Making choices here. It's the men. Oh. Our 4 people are still standing. I don't know how you're doing out there in the other locations. Okay. Well, now that we know the number one choice for men is to spend it with their spouse, even though they already spend more time with their spouse, what is it for women? Well, our number one choice, by the way, was exercise. We want to exercise. That's our number one choice if we have that extra hour. So where do you think we rank spending time with our spouse? If it's second, just hold up 2 fingers. Is it third, 3, 4th, or 5th? So hold up the number of fingers for where you think it is. For spending time with your spouse, we have ranked it, ladies, number 4. Oh, we still have one person standing here. First, women spend time on exercise, then we spend it on ourselves, then our children, and then our spouses. But you know what? It is ahead of sleep. Although one of the women that answered this survey, she asked me, can I count the time I sleep as time with my spouse? Well, are you curious about the men? So men, the folks that answered said, number 1 we know is partner spouse, exercise, very similar to women, child, and then time on their own, and then time sleeping. Well, thanks for playing the game. We did have a winner here, the last woman standing. I don't know how you turned out in your areas, but let's give them a hand. And thanks for playing that game. I'm going to run through what the typical day looks like, and as I do, this is a good time to pick out your pain point. So working, it turns out on average 10 hours a day. Sleeping, less than 7 hours. And Sarita and I actually had to talk before this. We actually do need 8 hours. There's study after study that says that, even though many of us say, I can get by on 5. It's been shown that productivity, innovation, if you get more sleep, the better. So we're only less than 7. Children, turns out to be around 2.5. Time on the chores, inside, outside, about 1.5 hours. Time with your spouse or partner, of course we know the men are really up there, but it's between 1 hour and 1.5 hours. Time on yourself gets down to close to 1 hour. And then exercise, friendship, community, all that starts to drift off. We don't spend the time that you can. There's only 24 hours in the day. So where is your pain point here? Where is it that you would like to spend more time or would like to put more emphasis? Keep that in mind, because I want you to start to think about the life that you picture for yourself. And I want to share with you, as we start to talk about a work-life vision, when I had my wake-up call, how I got my passion for this. I actually have 4 children, and I've always had a pretty intense career. It's been important to me. And there came a time when my kids were like 4 to 14 years old, and I was in a director position. The phone rang. It literally rang at home. And I answered it, and it was a telemarketer. Now, I never take these calls, but today I did. That particular day I did. And it was a person asking, what would it take for me to switch grocery stores? So he asked me, what grocery store do I go to? And I said, I go to this Kroger's, which is a grocery store here, and it was 2 miles from my house, and that's why I went to it. And the telemarketer said, okay, well, we have a brand new store opening up. It's further out than that, but it is going to be fantastic. One of these super stores, huge, samples every aisle. Would you go to this new store? And I said, no. He said, why? And I said, because my grocery store is close. It's 2 miles down the road. Well, he proceeded to say the pricing was going to be fantastic, the discounts, you just have to go. He told me about gas points that you could earn by going to this store. Feature after feature, and every time he'd ask me if I would go, and every time I would say no. He'd ask why, and I'd say because this one's close. Well, believe it or not, he hung up on me. And I laughed just like you. I thought, that was worth it. But then it hit me that truly I wouldn't try another grocery store because that one was 2 miles down the road. In fact, if you put a satellite, up above and watched my movements at that point in my life, my work was 4 miles from my home, so I went to work and back. I went to this grocery store and back, 2 miles. And I went to the children's school and back. So I was living, see if this works, yes, in those first few columns where I worked, slept, kids, home. There was nothing else. And it suddenly felt to me like my life was very claustrophobic, that all I did was within a 5-mile radius. And in fact, I felt like I was in a tank that was full of water, and the water was up to my chin, and this mere suggestion to use another grocery store would put me under. And I thought, what kind of life is this? Am I going to live like this for the next 10 to 20 years? That's not what I pictured. And that's when I started to read about work life. I read Stephen Covey. Many of you know that author. He wrote a book called First Things First. It helps you figure out how do you prioritize what really is important in your life. And then I read a book by Matthew Kelly called Rhythm of Life. And in this book, he talks about to really have a full life, you need to make sure that you're challenged intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. I mean, that's what a life is. And so I took those concepts, and that's how I put together something that's worked for me, and even with this new boss I have, is working all over again to keep me on track. And so I want to share that with you today. So think about your pain point from our exercise of the survey and see how it might fit this 4-step process. The first step is, what do you want in your life? Beyond those bare necessities that you're doing to survive, what would make your life the kind of life you envision? And so for me, I'm sharing with you my first step. I wrote down these roles. Of course, I do feel very important about a mother, wife, career, but what I added on was I did want more of the spiritual part back in my life. I missed my friends that I had when I was in my 20s and younger. I've always liked being a student. Susie and I here talked about that earlier today, that many of us like to go to school. Well, I put that back on my list, and we all saw how exercise is important to most of us. That physical aspect, I want it on my list. So your list will look whatever it is you want in your life, but I wanted to share at least my list. Well, this second step is where I blew those tank walls apart, where I got rid of that claustrophobic feeling. Because in the second step, you take those roles and you think about, what is it that you dream? What is it that you aspire to be in each of those roles? You think big. It's a bit of a paradox. Because when you're under stress, overwhelming stress, don't many of us say, let's cut things out. Let's stop doing things. And you start to get smaller and smaller. But by using this step here and saying, what is it that I want in my life? Allowing yourself to think aspirationally, long-term, it's energizing. Then you take that, and step 3 is think about what activities can you do now in a week's time, something achievable, reasonable, that will align with that vision and with that role, so that you feel every week you're working towards the person you want to be, the person you want to become. And this is the magical part. Now, I have some of the things that are just on my list. This was actually from this summer. I just pulled out and put in this presentation, and it changes all the time. But I'll share one or two stories to just illustrate the point. My husband got up this summer, and he said, yeah, I told you we're boomers already. So he said, boy, my arm is just aching when I wake up in the morning. I think it's this mattress. It's just too darn firm. So we should go out and get a soft mattress. Now, in my old life, when I lived in the tank, I would have said, hey, you're on your own. You know that part where the spouse is number 4? Yeah, you're on your own. I've got things to do. But now with this type of work-life vision, where I want to be a wife that's a lifelong partner, I actually looked at that and say, oh, here's an opportunity. Monday night, we can get on the internet, look at different mattresses, and then we can find a store, go out to the store and test them out. We can do that in a Monday night. I know we can. It's free on our calendar. And then let's just mull it over, and Wednesday, make a decision. Order the mattress, and we had it by Saturday. So the magic is, if you do this consistently, can you see that? Every week I do something like that with my husband, for my husband. He's eventually going to think I really do care about him. Another example, long-term implications. I'm amazed, because now I can look back in time. 10 to 15 years ago, I started to go back to school. I had moved from a technical position to a business position, so I thought I'd get my MBA. Well, it does seem impossible to go back to school with 4 kids and already in a pretty intense career. But I said, that's something I wanted to do. Let me give it a try. And I found a school that I kind of negotiated with to be able to take 1 course every semester, because I felt that's what I could achieve. And I found that school, great curriculum, so I got that agreement. Next was to look at my week-by-week plan to see where I could fit in times to study and do group work. But here's where the implications, I was just surprised. One of the times I found was when my children sat down to do their homework. Well, I sat down with them and did my homework. And so they started to see the type of work I was doing, and they were interested. Again, these are kids in grade school and middle school, so, not teenagers, they're still interested. So they said, I asked them, would you like to come to the presentation at college when I go to give it? And they said, sure. So I made arrangements with the professor, only took one daughter at a time, and they would hear my presentation and the group presentation. Well, fast forward, these 4 girls all have education as a real value in their life. And I'm thinking that's probably because they saw it was a value to me. So my oldest is going to med school, the next one's in law school. I've got one taking linguistic anthropology, very different than engineering. And my last one home, my 16-year-old, is showing signs as well as taking education very seriously. So there's long-term implications. When people see what you're doing, what your work-life vision is like, you can affect others around you. But it sounds very good, doesn't it? I can see you all saying, sure, sure. But life takes over on us, doesn't it? And these types of good intentions, like our New Year's resolutions, can pass us by. Well, that's why this 4th step is in there, and that's to write it down. And this is where my spreadsheet comes in. And for you millennials, I'm sure there's an app that you can use for this. But you put down those activities that you plan that line up with your vision and with your role in your week's plan. So you have a date and a time. A tip is to put in early things that are real important to you, like that exercise that we all yearn to do. Put that in early in your day, because once you get it done, you're done. It won't get away from you. There's a lot of white space here, and that's on purpose, because this is only those activities that you specially set aside for your vision, for all the roles that you're doing. And you see on Sunday night, I do my weekly plan. It takes 20 to 30 minutes, and I plan out my next week. And I reflect, how did I do the last week, the week before? And if I miss things, hey, it's okay, because maybe I got 50 or 60% of what I wanted done. That I'm doing for myself. I'm doing for that vision. I'm doing for that energizing feeling. Well, I'm going to end here with just a few comments. First is a call to action. And this call to action is to get together with people in your AWIN group, or maybe your spouse or a friend, and work this with them. Meet with them once a month and see how it's going. And I say this because that survey, here are some of the tips people had. I'm going to decide what's important in my life and be intentional about it. That fits right in what we've talked about. I'm going to ask for help. When I do ask for help, it's understood and it's provided. It's just that courage to speak up. My husband is actually very supportive. He's got a demanding job, so do I. But if we work together on the chores, the stress doesn't fall on just one of us. Hey, I don't always have to be perfect. I'm going to take Sunday off. No work, no church. No work, but church. Sounds like my kids. But church. A family dinner. And that part about spending time on your own? I like the last comment. It was some gentleman wrote in and said, music, jazz music. Lots and lots of jazz music. So working with other people on creating your work-life vision and putting it in place will help you make it a habit. If you do it 7 weeks in a row, it will become a habit. One more visual as we close. And it's the old rocks and sand story that we've heard. This empty jar is the week in your life. And you can fill it very quickly. It's how you fill it. If you fill it with all the emails, all the things other people want you to do, you can fill it with sand. And then you say, but wait a minute, I want to go out to dinner with my partner or my husband. And you try to fit that rock, that activity, in that jar, and you barely push it in there. That's stressful. You can't get that in there because you filled your week already with other things. So what you need to do is to fill that jar with rocks. So for instance, today I'm talking to my boss. I'm putting it on the line that I'm going shopping with my daughter because she's getting ready to leave for France for 5 months. So this afternoon we're going shopping at the outlet stores. And many of you from different locations, when you come here, you always visit us and go to those outlet stores. So that's a rock I'm putting in. I'm going to ask Ted and Joy. I told them ahead of time, I gave them a rock. How would you spend? What's important to you?
I'm going to spend, this is a New Year's resolution, so I'm going to double dip here, but I haven't been exercising nearly as much as I would like, and my 11-year-old daughter wants to exercise, so she and I have committed to spend 3 hours, 3 days a week, an hour each of those days to exercise together, and she researched on the internet, a program that we're going to do together, and we sort of started last night. We only got halfway through it, but I'm committing with this rock that I'm going to spend that time with her exercising.
Wonderful. Great. Spending time with the children, exercise, all at once. Joy.
Yeah, and mine's going to be, my son has really been, trying to work on his math and trying to spend a lot of time on that. And so I'm going to spend time with him and helping him with his math.
All right. That's important. I love math. Sarita was going to help me out. And if there's anyone else, get ready to stand up.
All right, I'm going to stand next to Karen because I don't have a microphone. I am going to commit to 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. After spending 2 weeks over the holidays on the West Coast time, I've been struggling to get back to East Coast time, so that 6 hours isn't quite doing it for me.
Great.
Thank you.
That's probably harder than anyone, to get that sleep in, because that's the first thing that goes, isn't it? Well, by putting those rocks in, and if all of you've thought about your pain point now, you've thought about what it is you want to change in your life, we've heard the extra hour of what people want to do, we've heard where we rank things, and maybe where we're not doing as well as we wanted with our friends, with our family, our spouses, exercise, time on our own, community, more sleep. Think through what it is you want to change. And then think about these 4 steps. Can you do this? Step 1, what roles do you want in your life? That puts you in charge. It makes you think about purposefully, what do you want to do? Step 2, what's your dream for that role? How do you want to be? Step 3, activities. Start to think about activities you can do, sleep, exercise program, help your child with their homework. Put that in a plan. Put that in your weekly plan to make sure that you get it done. And then every week, review that plan. We're going to give you a resource, and you see it here. It'll be on the first-hand page. It's a workbook that you can follow these steps together. Well, I said that we got the rocks in. We still do have to do the rest of our life, right? So the sand, as you know, still comes. But look at that. We've got the rocks in first. We filled it with sand. We're not getting all of that in, but you know what? We're getting in the rocks that are important to us. And that's how I want to leave you today. I want to thank Joy and Ted and all of you for having me here today. And my wish for you is that you put those rocks in first and that you create your work-life vision. Take charge and live the life that you envision. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. At this time, I'd like to open it up for questions that you may have. We're going to start here with in the Dublin audience. Those of you that are participating via video and via WebEx, if you could also think of questions and being able to submit those, we'd appreciate that. So with that said, does anyone here in the Dublin audience have questions for Karen? Yeah.
Hey, Karen. For myself, I may be over confidence. I feel I have a good balance already. Is there something that you can help me to identify the pinpoint?
So the question?
Yeah, the question is how to identify the pinpoint, the pain point in your life.
Well, that's a great question, especially to come from a confidence that I'm living the life that I want already. So I think you need to be confident that if you're doing what you like already, you may be just on track. If you would want to take a look at every week, perhaps, and kind of log, how are you spending your time? And then compare that to how you want to spend your time and see, is there anything different? Is there anything that you would want to change? And then I would look again at the way you want to be 10, 15 years from now. Joy put out a challenge right in the beginning, didn't she? What is it that you want in your career? What do you want that career to develop into? What do you want your life to develop into? But if I look back, which is a good place for me to, after working 30 years, to look back, a couple of things I wish I would have done more of is networking. And this AWIN group is wonderful to do that, and then outside groups. But networking and really developing relationships with people. And then starting to look at your career and putting yourself in charge of that. Where do you want to go? Get yourself a mentor, and I think Ted's going to talk more about that as well. What are the things you have to start doing to get you prepared? So your life is balanced now, but you might want to just look even more to the future and say, what is it that you would want? And start on those type of items. Does that? Good, good.
Are there other questions here in the Dublin audience?
Karen, I'm just curious, looking back on your career here at Ashland, is there anything that you would have done differently knowing your work-life vision now and how it's changed or not?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so just to repeat the question, looking at your career, would there have been anything that you would have done differently from a work-life effectiveness?
It's a great question. And as I've got into this new business, which is helping people with work life, especially women, challenging them that they can be everything they can be in their career and still have a very vital family life as well. And I've been going to different women's groups. So a group of us went to the Global Women's Conference. I've been at the WELD group, which was a local group here in Columbus. And what I have found is this whole confidence and energy by getting together with other women. And you know what's so important, and I love that the men are here with us today, because in women's groups today, men are also coming because they have so much to offer, and we have so much to learn from their work styles. So Sarita, I look back and I say, you know, I could have been much stronger in steps I've taken. So for instance, to be able to ask for what you want, to be able to not just think working hard is going to do it. That you actually just step out there, take the courage, and ask. So those are the kind of things I get from getting together with other women and going to these other outside groups. So don't get too narrow-focused, as we tend to do, on we've got so much to do, so much to do. There's another thought to put on your weekly plan. How can I get out and just network with somebody I admire or respect, and what can I learn from them?
Great.
Hi, Karen. Just a quick question. As you're building the roles and the aspirational goals, do you have any resources to go to that might have some ideas for, you know, just out-of-the-box thinking for enriching your life, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And when I do this similar talk in a workshop setting, one of the things that I have people do, and it's worked for me, is to just sit down, if you're thinking about your vision in particular, is to sit down and just start to write and set a timer for 10 minutes. And put at the top of your page your vision, work-life vision of your life. Just write that down and then write. And you have to do it with pen and pencil, which I know most of us are so much on the computer, but pen and pencil really helps you just pour out what is on your mind. And if you do that for 10 minutes, and you can do that for 10 minutes once a day for a week, and you read that over, you'll start to see themes. And that really helps you think big and aspirationally and start to see what it is that you want in your life. So that's a good way of doing it. Another good way is mastermind groups. And I don't know if anyone has ever participated in those, but it's groups of 4 or 5 people get together. It's like mentoring, we've talked about. And each person takes a turn to say, here's the current challenge I have. And the other 4 or 5 in the group just work on your challenge. And so for a work life, what kind of things should I be doing? How do I handle this problem? That's been very effective as well. The workbook that we'll pass out has some ideas, has some steps that go along with these 4 steps, and it also has some resources to read, like Stephen Covey, like Matthew Kelly as well. So that's what I would suggest, Kathy.
Karen, we do have a couple questions from the video group. A couple of the questions are similar. So how do you fit 25 hours into 24 hours a day? What basically goes away? I mean, how do you fit in the extra hour?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great question because we can't get an extra hour. But it's all about making decisions on how you do spend the time that you have. So I'm going to confess here. And I'm going to confess that I'm not much of a cook, never was. So unfortunately, when it comes to making dinner, it's what's in the refrigerator at the time, or where are we going to go out, or how do we put it on the table. And I had the occasion just recently when my daughter was at school, and it was one of those debates, right? And in this debate, I won't name names, but the candidate said, we have to get our women home on time to make dinner. And my daughter quickly tweeted me and said, Mom, did you hear that? And I said, oh, did you hear me yell all the way from here to Washington, D.C.? And she said, the people in the group watching it said, yeah, you know, that's something that my mom always did. And Emily spoke up, and she said, well, my mom didn't, and I still made it to law school. And I'm just fine that she didn't cook me dinner every single night. So, you know, in my life, that was something that I did leave out. Now, I'm not saying that's right for everyone, because I know it isn't. I know other people have a lot of value from that. But there are certain things that you might just say, that's not me. And I'm going to make up for it in other ways, because these other ways are just what I value. So I think it is about making decisions, and you do have to drop something out. And we've got to stay away from the guilt. Because if you're doing everything else that makes sense for you and your family, and your friends, that will come through in the long term. And by the way, Emily is a very good cook. Another benefit.
One other question. What time frame would you recommend when setting your vision? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years out?
Good question.
And this will be our final question.
Thanks, and I'm glad to have all the questions. I really appreciate those. They're good mind stretches for me. I would say you could think 5 to 7 years out. And I will tell you, the vision I put up here in my slides is my most recent one. Since I've retired, I've come back and re-looked at what my roles are and what my visions were. So I think 5 to 7 years out, and be flexible, be dynamic, because your life changes. So revisit that on a maybe annual basis, but think 5 to 7 years out. Again, someone in the audience and I were talking, and they want to be, I have a very specific person in mind that they want to be for a cause in the future. Keep that in mind, because you can actually get there. You can start with your small steps, do whatever you can, but by having that vision in your mind, your life will naturally go that direction. And especially if you write it down and do this week-by-week activity, I'm telling you, you will build and build and build, and those visions can become realities. Thank you.
Good. Let's give Karen a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Karen, thank you so much. I think you know, the steps that you gave us are ones that we can actually practically put into our life and are very doable. So thank you very much. And welcome and introduce Ted.
Thanks, Joy. And I would also just like to say thanks, Karen. When I listen to a guest speaker, I really like to be able to go away being able to think about something new and different, and more importantly, be given a tangible, practical model that you can actually implement. And I think you did that very well, so thank you again. And it is great to see 6 guys in the audience. I appreciate that. The first time there were none, and slowly picking up, which is great. And these events really have been good for me. You learn a lot. You also learn a little bit about the similarities between men and women and the differences. I'm shocked by the responses of the females at Ashland that if you were given 1 more hour being a man, you wouldn't want to spend that with your spouse. That's shocking to me, disappointing. My guess is my wife would have answered that differently, but not sure. Really, I need to wrap up just in a couple of minutes, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Hopefully you learned a little bit today and can take these thoughts home and help manage that work-life balance a little bit better. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.